All right, so let's call to order the New York State Board of Real Estate Appraisers, May 14, 2017. I believe we have a quorum. I would like to begin by welcoming our new board member, James LeGret. James, if you'd like to give a little background and how you somehow took the wrong turn and ended up here. But if you'd like to share with us a little background and a little bit about yourself, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. Well, thank you. I look forward to the opportunity to be part of the board. I'm from Rochester. I grew up in Canandaigua, New York, and I got into the appraisal business in 1985. I trained for a couple of years in a fee shop. I worked for 7 years as the appraisal manager for a regional bank in Rochester. Then I've been in 2 different partnerships for the past 22 years. So it's been a good career. I'm a certified residential appraiser. Our firm is Midland Appraisal Associates. We do all types of evaluation and counseling type work, and primarily in Rochester and the Finger Lakes region is our territory.
Okay, well, I'll put a misnomer aside now. Anthony probably told you I like to be referred to as Your Honor. You can just call me Sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. There you go. If you live by that rule, there is no other rule you have to live by. All right. Going from a fun note to a somber note, Amy Penzabine, who is the Assistant Director of Licensing for New York State, her son was killed in a car accident last week. Her son Logan was home from school. From what I can gather, was going back to school to take class and was killed in an automobile accident. So if everyone can keep Amy and her family in your thoughts during this difficult time, we would all appreciate that. Okay, so as we normally do, what I'm going to do is, Anthony, I'm going to have you lead off, and then we'll go to New York, and then we'll go around table in Albany. Just introduce yourself. I'd appreciate that. Anthony, you want to start us off?
I'm Anthony Jerisaw from Niagara Falls, New York.
Okay, and Jim has already introduced himself. New York, if you can hear me, if we can go around the table quickly, just acknowledge who you are.
Eliezer Rodriguez. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Bronx Manhattan North Association of Realtors.
Dave Mossberg, Department of State.
Arnita Gant, Department of State.
Ernest Delaney, Department of State.
Thank you, New York.
Lillian Levy, Board Member.
Mark Mastrobino, Department of State.
Nancy Harrigan, Department of State.
Marcy Rose, Department of State.
Sharon Sherlin, Department of State Board Coordinator.
Jody DeLallo, Department of State.
Fleety Clark, Department of State.
Dan Bernetta, Department of State.
Carol DeSano, Vice Chair.
Steve Raffaello, Board Member, Chair. Okay, welcome everyone. We'll begin with our agenda. We are on agenda point 2, which is department reports. Ernest, if you can update us on enforcement and continuing education audits at this point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Since our last board meeting on May 23rd, 2016, we have received a total of 74 new appraisal complaint cases. Over that same time period, we closed a total of 89 cases. For the ones that were closed, 30 cases we settled by consent order. The appraiser agreed to pay a fine and or additional education in order to resolve the matter. On 4 cases, we issued holds against the appraiser license. These holds will prevent the appraiser from renewing without them first resolving issues with the Department of State. One of the cases went to a hearing in which the appraiser license was revoked. The other cases were closed as either no violation, no jurisdiction, or they were dismissed. Our total current appraisal caseload of open cases stands at 58 cases. For the appraiser CE audit, again over the same time frame since our last meeting, we're currently auditing about 10% of the appraisers who renew each month, and that number comes to about 12 to 15 appraisers we're auditing each month. From this audit, we have resulted in 5 consent orders, and again, this consent order requires the appraiser to pay a fine, and it may give the appraiser additional time to take education, any lack in education. 3 appraisers have surrendered their appraisal license. 11 audits we have sent to counsel's office with the recommendation that a hearing be take place against the appraiser. Our non-compliant rate is under 10%, which keeps us in good standing with the appraisal subcommittee.
Okay, Ernest, I have a question.
Yes.
The 10% guideline which we're auditing for continuing education, is that something that the appraisal substandard board has as their benchmark?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, so, and just to give you a little history, I don't know who in the room has been here long enough, Joey might go to. At one point, where were we? Weren't we at like 50% of violations?
Yeah, we were high at one point, and then we, so if you go over 10% non-compliance, they want you to audit every single person.
Okay.
And ask for the education, but we've been under 10% for
Yeah, and
8 years at least.
I mean, and a credit Ernest, Jody, Keith when he was here, we went from the, no offense to redheaded stepchildren, we went from the redheaded stepchild to at least being within the fold where we didn't have to do 100% audit. So a lot of credit given to Ernest and the staff at DOS for really making that turnaround. Okay, are there any questions of Ernest or suggestions from anyone in Albany or Buffalo? Okay, thank you, Ernest, very much. I move to agenda point 3, action item approval of the 2013, May 23rd, 2016 meeting summaries. This was furnished by Sharon to all the board members. Are there any questions or comments about the meeting summary from May 23rd, 2016, Albany or Buffalo?
None in Buffalo.
New York or Buffalo?
I just have
Okay, Carol has a question in Albany.
a couple of questions. There were some line items on there. One was under the Amy was going to state the FAG position, department position, research concern, draft a statement posted on the website. Not find that on the website. I'm not sure if it's been done. It's in the minutes from
Draft a statement to the FHA appraisers, yes, under new business.
yeah.
Carol, I will follow up on that, and if it's ready, we'll get up on the website, and if not, I will send a message to board members on status.
And if I can just jump in, Becky Jones with the public, because I made this comment during the public comment where we had our meeting last May. It was in regards to the FHA change, and the concern was, how New York State with the home inspector licensing was, and we were going to just allow, because we had a subcommittee for it, and then NAR got involved and actually made some progression.
Okay.
Because FHA actually restated specifically their appliance, because the new change to the HUD manual required the appraisers to turn on all appliances and make the statement that they were operational and functional.
Okay.
Meaning, literally, as an appraiser, I'm doing a load of laundry and I'm doing a load of dishes, because I have to declare that it's operational and it's functional. How do you do that unless you know the whole cycle's going through?
Right.
So NAR lobbied and spoke directly with HUD and said, okay, we're going to back off on that. Here's the new statement. So my concern is as these come through, how to promulgate that or educate our appraisers in New York State what that information is.
Right.
So I can help with that if you want to keep me on the loop on that.
If it's not ready, Becky, I will follow up with you to get the background so we can get something together. And I also think, I know that we're not at the point of the agenda we're talking about the newsletter, but this might be a good piece to include in the newsletter.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if everyone's going through our website and looking for updated information, but certainly a newsletter that we're going to be sending out to the appraisers. They'll have access to the information.
Absolutely.
You're going to bring up the other.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I have a question concerning an action item back from May 23rd, 2016. David, you had reported at that time that the appraisal management company bill was assigned a legislative number of S7766. It was being sponsored by, by Senator Farley. Where are we in the process with this? Do you have any update on it?
Yeah, so it's my
Senator
understanding.
Farley has retired.
Yes. Right now, to my knowledge, there isn't a new sponsor to move forward with the AMC bill. The department's legislative council is currently working on, trying to pick up where the department left off. But unfortunately, at this point, we don't really have any new information. Obviously, the prior bill is no longer being considered as, Senator Farley is no longer a member of the Senate.
Are we
But if
having
there are any
difficulty?
updates? Sorry?
Okay, are you having difficulty getting a sponsor?
That would be something that our legislative council would have more information on. I know that, the department has said that we've wanted to move forward with this bill, so I think that we're actively working on getting somebody to.
Because we're gonna, we have to pass it. Because it was a requirement through.
Dodd-Frank.
Through what?
Dodd-Frank.
It was a requirement through Dodd-Frank, so we have to pass it. So I'll put the earnest, not Ernest Delaney, but I'll put the earnest on us. Any board members, I'm going to go to my state senator. I thought it was moving. I'm going to go to Joe Griffo and talk to him while I'm here and see where he's going to land on it, because I would like him to sponsor it. All right, so I can coordinate with Whitney on that.
Yep.
What is name?
Is we are allowed as board members to approach our
I really actually asked that
representatives
first.
to that?
Absolutely.
Because actually, 2 years ago, when I had this bill, I talked about going to my local senators and assemblymen, and because I thought I could get sponsorship from both parties, and I thought I was told I couldn't do that. So if we are allowed to go out and advocate for this bill and the reasons why, we're constituents also, and I think that it may move forward. We presented this bill, and this was approved by the board in October of 2015, and it is a really good bill, and there are many reasons currently in the appraisal world why this bill needs to be passed. And, there were years of work that went into the bill prior to it getting to that point, and well-researched, it's well-written. We have a lot of very good advice from a lot of people that are very knowledgeable, and we need to move forward on this. So if we have the blessing of the Department of State, I think that we have board members that probably can try to advocate for the bill if we have that permission. And
you can shed some light on this for me, because I'm somewhat bewildered or just confused, I guess. And I guess this is more for David or for Whitney. I thought this was going to be a department bill that was going to go through the governor's office.
It is a department bill. I think what's complicated it is that Hugh Farley's no longer a member of the legislature. And we do have, there's a time frame attached to the bill. So I think, given the timing and the fact that we really need to get this passed, please, if you speak with your elected officials to see if they're interested in sponsoring the bill. If so, they can reach out to Matt Tebow. He's the Department of State's Legislative Counsel. Yes. Yeah.
Can I jump in and ask a question? Because I know it's, Steve, do I have your permission?
Yes,
okay.
you do.
So, in Dodd-Frank, it literally says it's required for each state to take on the AMC bill, and we have a deadline of August of 2018. And if we don't meet that deadline, we actually lose the privilege of financing in the secondary market.
Yeah.
So if that hammer is hit, that could devastate New York State altogether.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I guess since we don't have a legislative representative here, I'm going to reflect back to staff, whether it's Whitney or David. if we plan on an October 18th signing, prior to that signing, where do we have to be with the legislative calendar? I mean, obviously we're into 17 now, so I mean, if we got to be on the January legislative calendar, correct?
Right.
So it's voted through in May before they leave. So it can be signed somewhere between May and October. Am I wrong in legislators leaving Albany for the summer at the end of May? Is that the date?
David, do you know when they leave and when they reconvene?
I thought it was when the budget was passed and they don't reconvene again until August.
I think that that's usually the customary schedule for when they're in session. I don't actually think they ever sort of gavel out, though, so I think that there's still time for the bill to possibly get picked up and be sort of in effect before the federal requirements come into place.
Okay. All right.
And I believe when Vicki Ledbetter was here for her last review, she indicated that they can extend that deadline if the states will show that they're making good faith efforts to pass the bill. I know, gosh, when I first came here, there were some changes to the statute. I believe it was increasing the educational requirements for appraisers, and we ran into that in New York. We were able to get extensions. So that's not ideal. Certainly, we'll try to get it passed by the actual deadline, but if not, we'll work closely with the AFC to get any extensions that we need.
Right. I think that was a housekeeping bill we talked about. We changed the education requirements.
Yeah.
So did that need to go to full vote? Was that just a housekeeping bill that for those changes?
That was a legislative change.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we all have some homework. I mean, I would rather. I'm going to talk from a personal perspective. This has been 5 years in the making, and I would like to see this off the table, move forward and passed prior to October, because there's two people in the room, not including me, who put a lot of sweat and effort into this. So I think it would be just nice to get it through, get it over with, and move it on to something else.
I can't emphasize enough how important this bill is in the state of New York, for the state of New York to have a healthy real estate market, and it really needs to move forward.
So another comment on that, because I know when Whitney and we were talking about this, and I think Bill Collins, I think you're a public member there in New York.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Bill. I think if we get stories from appraisers in New York State, specifically why we need this bill passed, would that be helpful?
I think that's always helpful, especially with a technical type bill like this. I think it's very technically worded, and it's not readily apparent from the text of the bill why it needs to get passed. So anytime you can, easily explain it, stories are great.
Okay.
It's short, simple.
Okay.
It captures attention.
All right, great. Because Bill, I know that's something you could probably do for the public, is we reach out to the New York State appraiser community and ask for stories where this AMC regulation is going to help them.
Can I make a suggestion? Is this something we can do in conjunction with NISAR, with their
Yes.
We can
Yes.
put together and not just opinion, but a recommendation
We need
letter
stories.
with attached stories,
Yeah.
and then circulate it. Whitney, would that be the easiest way to get to get that information out?
Yeah, if you think that's an efficient way to do it, absolutely reach out to your colleagues in NISAR.
Okay.
Because then, worst case scenario, if they're going to have a public meeting, which I don't know if they will or not, we can always show up to testify. We can get a group of people together to show up in Albany today and testify in front of the finance committee or wherever this is coming out of.
Can I just ask, and I realize we're still under the agenda, but I didn't know where else to bring this up. So one more question on this. Seeing that the senator who sponsored this, will the bill number remain the same?
Yeah, David, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that a bill number is good for 2 years, regardless of sponsor. I'm not a legislative attorney, so but I'll find out for you, Carol.
Okay.
All right.
I think we need to know. And I don't believe we do have a bill number for the assembly. I don't think it was ever sponsored in the assembly, to my knowledge. And maybe, David, you know the answer to that?
No, I don't ever recall seeing
I
it
think
picked
that
up in the assembly.
Right. I don't think it ever moved forward to the assembly, which, but before we start advocating, I think we need to know whether that bill number stays the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David, for all your information. Thank you, Whitney. Okay, if there aren't any other questions or comments about the meeting summary from May 23rd, 2016, can I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
Anthony, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so it's the summary meeting of May 23rd, 2016 is now passed. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 4, new business, unlicensed activity. I will defer to Carol DeSanto.
Okay, so we have another bill that was also an addendum to the current license law bill that was turned into the Department of State in September of 2015. We have had no action on that proposed amendment to the bill, and that was to tighten up the license law and who can perform appraisals. We have run into numerous situations where there is unlicensed activity, either by people who were previously licensed, may have suspended license, who are doing licensed activity knowing that they need to be licensed, or maliciously doing appraisals. I will just give a personal example. Very often I get emails and calls from the public as a board member. And a while back, I got a call from a member of the public asking me if I had checked the Department of State disciplinary list. And I said, not lately. And they said, well, there's a local person that has been out in houses acting as an appraiser who is suspended. It's not the only incident, but I just bring that up because that actually came into my office, and it is happening out there. We have other stories, and I want to defer to Becky Jones, who brought a couple stories with her that she sought out. It's actually really important that we amend this license law and that move forward to a bill in both the Senate and the Assembly, and that actually I think that this was just an amendment and didn't have to be a legislative action.
No, it would be a legislative
Okay,
action.
I remember we had this conversation so long ago, and I am not a legislative person, so I don't know where it is. But you know, the recommendations there have been vetted by the Department of State and these people. It's really important that we get together these stories of what's happening in the actual field with unlicensed activity. So Becky,
yeah, I do. I actually got a story from my vice chair with NYSAR Appraisal Committee. She's up in Watertown, and they actually do a lot of foreclosed properties. And what's happening in her neck of the woods is they're sending the office people, the non-licensed people, to go out and do the inspections. So because they're vacant homes. So they're going out and doing the observation and the inspections of the homes, gathering the data, bringing it back to their appraisal company, and then the appraiser is completing the appraisal saying, yes, I inspected the property. So that's a big issue up in their territory. My personal story on this, because I teach the qualifying courses, and I had a particular student who was already participating in appraisal business, and she was just getting her assistant's license. She was actually working for a commercial appraiser in Albany, and during the course of all these classes, because I'm with them probably 6 months as we go through the R5 to R11 and USPAP, so I get to know these students pretty well. So just during conversations, and then finally she came to me with a closed door saying, here's my issue. I'm literally calling the real estate agents, setting the appointments, going out to the properties, and signing the reports, and I don't have a license. how am I going to get my experience points? So here she's out there acting in as an appraiser. And the reason why she can sign the reports is we're talking about commercial transactions, so we're not dealing with, you know, the federal regulations. So that was an eye-opening story for me. So she's kind of in a pickle because now she has an employer that won't be her supervisory appraiser, so she can now start to accumulate her points. So her license is like, okay, what do I do now? So I feel bad for her, let alone the public that's been out there where she's been doing the appraisals.
Well, she's not licensed.
Well, she is now.
Okay. Because she could use, because we don't have mandatory licensing,
And
she can use that experience towards her licensure.
Well, here's the question, is Jody made the statement, when does the time clock start for the experience?
It just has to be within the 5 years. Is it 5 years? I think still
2 years
before. Well, the experience has to be completed
In
within
2
5
years.
Within the last 5 years.
Okay.
2 years of experience, but have to have been completed.
Okay, so
within-
minimum of 2, maximum of 5.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay, okay, all right. So, but that's an issue for the public because she's got no experience and she's out there performing the appraisals. Well, I shouldn't say experience. She has no education and she's out there performing appraisals. So here I have her in the basic appraisal classes going, oh, is that what I've always been doing? And I'm like, you know, being her teacher and trying to get her through this, I didn't. But it was just very eye-opening to me that in the commercial world, that's what's happening.
Let me ask you a question, Jody. Is the 5-year clock start when they apply for their assistance license? Is that can you go? When they apply to
No,
the
so
exam?
the experience has to be within the previous 5 years of application to us for a license.
So if you're applying for just a regular residential, licensed residential, it'd be 5 years from that application.
That your experience had
All
to
right,
be.
yeah.
So that would be
You
Yes,
can
if
probably
you
add to
applied
that
today,
too.
we would look
Right.
back
5 years.
from today for that
And
experience.
you would take on supervised, because it was.
Well, it has to be supervised, but it doesn't have to be from a supervisory appraiser because she's not licensed. So somebody has to sign off on her experience. She has to prove her experience, but it doesn't have to be a supervisor or appraiser officially, you know,
But the
registered.
person who's signing on the supervisor has to be of the same equivalent license regards to the person that they're signing off on, right? So if I'm a residential certified, I'm not going to supervise and sign off on a commercial or a general. It has to be of an equivalent level.
Well, either way, it's an issue for the public because we've got uneducated people performing appraisals.
Well, but here's, and I'm in a gray area.
Anybody can say
Because a
that.
lot of this, you know, kind of a moving target at times, depending on who you talk to, who in the review process when it's going on. If we're saying to people, you can go out and work before you take courses and before you sit for an exam, then what kind of merit do we have to regulate them? See what I'm saying?
Right.
If we're saying, I'm like, I'm a mason. I know a lot about foundations, so I want to become a commercial appraiser. And I have friends, commercial appraisers. Yeah, come on in.
Yep.
And I start to work. And I'm not really under the regulatory agency's out because I don't hold a license. At what point do we say to that person, okay, well, you have to live by our guidelines, but we don't. Well, even with that,
So, but they
you're
can't.
in the commercial world, that AMC.
So if they're involved in federally
okay,
related
I'm sorry.
transactions, then they're under the ASC.
Well, there's a de minimis level of 250 though. If the value is under 250, then it's not.
So that's
We have an issue, and what we need is mandatory licensing in New York State. That we need that amendment signed is really what we need to solve this problem.
Right, but even with the mandatory licensing though, if you are allowed to practice, okay, without having a license or without being somewhere in the mix, that's going to have no effect. Because I can only say, listen, I'm not licensed. Or are we going to say in this building, you've got to have an apprentice license prior to working,
It's all applied.
okay, I've read it, and I'm kind of, it's been like 3 years, so I'm kind of like, hold back.
I know, it's
I think we did the same time we did the AMC.
We did. That's been revised, and it also has a scope of work evaluations. It doesn't just say appraisals. It says you have to be a licensed appraiser for appraisals and evaluations.
Opinion or something?
So that covers the desktops that are out there that are popping up and things like that.
Trying to.
It's obviously happening because just this year I've had about a half a dozen inquiries regarding the experience of an unlicensed person. In fact, as recent as yesterday, I had a discussion with a local school who was under the impression that the experience would not count, and I explained the same thing, that without the mandatory licensing, we accept the experience of an appraiser of the right level, and neither of those people are required to have the supervisory appraiser course or supervisory appraiser approval. In that case, we accept that experience. It's once the person has an assistance license, then both are required to have the supervisory appraiser education.
So that, for someone moving up from residential to commercial, they have to have a supervisory general for all their experience.
Equal license.
Yeah. So in my example of my student who called me back, who I know spoke with because I told her call Mark because I knew you'd know the answer. She's literally not getting her license until she gets all her experience. So as Steve said, we have no way of regulating her if she's out there doing harm.
But it's,
I mean, the only way to catch a situation like that is to catch the licensed person who's signing a report with someone else doing, I mean, look, and I'm going to talk off the top of my head, but from some background, we always allow for people to get credit for working on a report as long as it was written in the report, the person was not licensed and they were working on it, and they were under the supervision of a licensed New York State appraiser. But except the only way we're going to catch someone who's allowing a non-licensed appraiser to go out and do inspections and then sign a report is first-hand knowledge, because you're not going to catch it on a report because there's nowhere except that person's going to ask for credit in the report and it's not specified. Then obviously there's no credit and we have an issue.
These sound like use path violations too.
Yeah.
Yep. They don't understand USPAP because they're not taking the class.
Well,
I have a suggestion. If you are going to be out talking to your elected officials to get sponsorship for the AMC bill, it's probably a good opportunity to talk about the mandatory licensing as well. I mean, one of the problems that we have with the Department of State is we're only allowed to submit a certain number of departmental bills every year. It's very low. I want to say last year was like 2 for the entire department. And licensing is competing with a lot of other divisions. We have corporations and codes and counsel's office. So it's tough for us to get departmentals. But you, as board members, you have relationships with your local elected officials. You can certainly speak with them to try to get them to sign on and sponsor to come in as a regular legislative proposal.
Okay.
thank you. Great suggestion.
all right.
Once again, more stories.
More stories.
Any comment or questions or concerns from Buffalo or New York concerning Carol's new business report on unlicensed activity? Okay.
Actually, I have one other item that I had in notes. And I can bring it up under new business.
Go ahead.
Never mind. It was just, as part of that, just a suggestion that many other departments, like broker's licenses, have an ID card, a picture ID card. Appraisers don't have one. And it would be a good idea to have that issued with a picture ID card that they have to show when they go into a property. I think that, so people know, the public could know to ask if they're licensed or not. So it's just a suggestion. I don't know how difficult that is, but I know a lot of other disciplines. I have numerous other cards for various reasons. And, you know, if that's something that, I don't know how you move something like that forward, but.
Yeah, that would be legislative as well. We have it for a real estate broker,
Right.
so there's an actual provision right in the statute that requires the Department of Motor Vehicles to issue what's called the pocket card
Yeah.
So the application comes into us with the regular license application, and then once we approve it, we send the request to DMV, and they issue the photo ID card.
Would have your license category right on the card,
Has your name,
with your
license
expiration
number.
date right on the card. You know, like your life and purpose license. You know, it just. So that would have to be a legislative change.
The language exists in the real property law. If you have an elected official who's interested in it, they could just look at the real property law for guidance and maybe simple language to draft.
Take on another one. Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on under new business, section 4, item B, proposed policy statements and exposure drafts. This is something that's coming out of, Whitney, correct me if I'm wrong, is this coming out of what?
This is coming out of the ASC. We received it, reviewed it internally, I'd say like around 2 months ago. They're proposing to make changes to the policy statements, and they're asking for public comment. We've reviewed it internally and didn't see any issues, but I'll have Sharon circulate a copy to all the board members so you can take a look at it as well, to see if there's anything worth commenting on.
Okay. So right now, we're in the review process with that. Sharon is going to furnish all board members with that. If you have any comments or questions on it, if you want to get them back to Sharon, then we'll put them together, Sharon, if there's any list of that, any comments or concerns about it. All right, item C, distance learning, Anthony Jarisol.
Before I start, is this the exposure draft here that's included in our folder?
That's the AQB.
That's the AQB.
Oh, it's different. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but if, please review this as well and get any comments or questions to us.
I'm going to talk about that at public comment.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Okay. Well, I had somebody contact me. You know, you have people contact you about how to become an appraiser, and then when you tell them what's involved, you know, they kind of get discouraged. So the one person I spoke to was asking about taking qualifying education online, and I had seen, you know, qualifying education offered online, but I guess I didn't realize that New York State did not accept online classes for qualifying education. And so I spoke to Steve, and I did just a little bit of research, and it seems that out of the 50 states, there's 8 states that do not accept online education classes for qualifying education. New York is one of them, and so I'd like us to consider whether we should or should not accept online education for qualifying education. There's nothing in the law that explicitly says education has to be in a classroom setting. It just outlines the education you need, you know, the qualifying education that you need. Myself, I think we keep losing appraisers, and there's fewer people coming into the business. This might be a way of helping people get into the business. There's all kinds of great online education from all kinds of different
Providers.
Right, education. You know, the Appraisal Institute, you know, private companies, they all offer these great classes, and so I think it would be a good way to ease people to get into the business, and I thought we could talk about it.
I have to thank Anthony, because he called me on this a few months ago, and I put the ball back into his court and said, whatever you could bring and find out would be helpful. Anthony, thank you for the information you provided. I think it at least gives us a base for which we can discuss this. I mean, there's a couple things. First, this had come up before. We talked about reciprocity and some questions about some other states. but the qualifying courses that were taken online versus live. And Mark, you can jump in, or anybody can jump in at that point. And I think the question that came up, and I think was answered, was the monitoring of the exam for those courses had to be done live. And I think we, at that point, we established or established reciprocity with some states that we didn't have reciprocity with prior to, because that was one of our concerns. That being a basis of conversation, am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right. We looked at the real estate regulation that requires a proctor classroom
That's what it
exam
was.
for qualifying education.
Right.
And the regulations don't provide for distance learning education, rather than, not that the regulations require you to take it in a classroom, but it doesn't provide for distance learning.
Right, and I think one of the points that we had, this came up when we were talking about the national testing centers. But part of it was that they weren't, the qualifying courses were not having, or didn't have, or I don't know exactly what it was, we're not having monitoring exams. And that was a point of contention for us. Some of the states had changed that language. So with that being said, and kind of marrying off with where Anthony's going, is there a possibility that we could allow distance learning to be accomplished for mandatory classes or qualification classes if they had a proctored exam?
Yes. Okay. The reason why we haven't pursued it so far is you want something in regulation to require the proctored exam and to provide other safeguards like timeout mechanisms, so someone can't just turn on the computer and let it run and then get credit for the course. So we've drafted a regulation. It's been submitted to the governor's office for review. And David, have you heard any feedback from Chamber on the proposed rule?
We actually sent it over there, I think, 2 additional times. We unfortunately haven't had any progress moving that one through, but I know it's one of the pending regulations that we intend on going back to Chamber with to try to see if we could get any movement on it.
All right. I know that our general counsel meets with her counterpart in the governor's office, so maybe she could specifically mention this one to him at our next meeting. I know that we've been contacted by people who are having a hard time finding some of these courses in their areas because of supply and demand. So it's in the schools will wait until they have a certain number of students enrolled, and there's less demand for some of the courses. So I think it's unfortunate that people are waiting and possibly not able to get the education that they need.
Well, Anthony, jump in here, because you had brought this up a few years ago, which I thought we did well with. You had gotten some contact, and I want to say it was Fredonia or it was Williamson, and somebody who couldn't, who were making you had to sit live with the course. It wasn't a qualifying course, but they couldn't get it. At least they couldn't. I'm sorry. It was a online course that was not being given in New York State, but was being given in Ohio. And we allowed that person to take that course online in Ohio. Previously, we wouldn't let them. So assuming that it kind of falls in the same realm, doesn't it?
I just want to piggyback on Anthony a little bit. I received an email yesterday from an appraisal firm downstate. As a member of the board, I forwarded that on to the Department of State, asking this very question, saying that they were having a hard time finding the courses because they'd enroll in them and then the courses were being canceled, and was there anything that could be done? So I think it is an issue, and we've certainly had the conversation of the live versus, we've got to make sure that they're actually doing the coursework. There has to be balance, checks and balances in that.
They do build those into a lot of online courses.
Yes. Quizzes along the way. I mean, I just took another designation course, online with multiple sections of designation. And there was a quiz every so often, and then a huge exam at the end.
Quiz for understanding.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And you can't move on if you don't pass it. And if you fail more than 1 or 2 of them, you've got to start at the beginning of the course all over again. So there were things built into that. And that was the first time I'd ever done something that was that intensive a course online. I took the first part of it live, and then that was part 2.
to do online. And so they actually did build in very good checks and balances, and it was a really good learning experience. But those need to be developed, and they need to be developed well, because the live courses, you get so much out of the interaction of the other students and your instructor in the classroom. That's not going to be there in the online course, so you got to make sure they're paying attention. But it's hard, and it's especially hard in rural communities. People, back many years ago, and I won't say how many years ago, when I took classes, I traveled all over the country to take my classes. Because I just, what did I expect from the county monitor?
No, what do you expect? They have computers,
Well, yeah, but they weren't available locally back then, and I took maybe a couple in New York State, and I was in Boston and Washington and Florida and all over the place because I wanted the best classes. Now people are just trying to get the classes, and that's it's an issue. It is an issue, and most schools are there. They have to be able to keep the doors. They have to be able to pay their staff and make it work for them. And I understand if they don't have enough numbers in the classroom, they have to do that.
One possible solution is, you mentioned a course in Ohio. We very infrequently will approve a course to be given at more than one location at the same time, what we use the term video courses. Distance education is defined as a physical separation of the student and the instructor. If you were to offer a course in one fixed location and you have this transmitted to other approved locations so that all students at all locations are there at the same time, right, and the instructor is available for everyone at each location. Again, this is something we ask the organization or the provider to give us a very detailed description of how this would work, and we have approved it for several organizations. And again, it's not a person in the convenience of their own home taking the course at their leisure. It's basically a classroom. They're just attending a different classroom, which you potentially have across the country all at the same time if all of the conditions were met for us to grant approval.
And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, had mentioned about having the interaction in the classroom. I think there's something written in the real estate that requires an instructor to be available, and right? Is that still okay? To be available in case the student has questions, so they can email them or call them or whatever. So that's maybe something to consider.
So this would have to be legislatively done again.
It's a regulation, so it's easier than a change to the statute. A change to the statute has to go through the Senate and the Assembly and be signed by the governor. A regulation is a rule. So we propose it as the Department of State. We don't have a limit on rule changes, unlike legislation. It gets reviewed by the governor's office, and then it gets reviewed by the regulatory review unit in the Department of Budget. And if they approve it, then we have to publish it for public comment, get comments for 45 days. We have to consider the comments and vote to adopt the law. So it's easier. The key is getting the approval from the chamber and the budget department.
So the adoption of the rule would be voted here?
Yes.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The distance learning policy that the Department of State has now is a regulation. Is that correct?
It would be a regulation. Currently, we don't allow the distance learning because we don't have any rules to govern it, which would be the regulation.
Well, that's what I understood. It was like it's the policy right now of the Department of State not to take the distance learning, but it's not. So but it's not actually a regulation, and I couldn't find anything in the law that.
Right. There's nothing in the law. The reason we don't allow it is because we don't have any of the protections currently to make people adhere to, like making the exam be proctored, having the safeguards in the course, like the codes or the quizzes, to make sure people are actually paying attention to the course when it's running. We really need those before we allow the distance learning. Otherwise, I think there could be a lot of abuses.
So I didn't go to each state and look up what their policy was. I did some research from like different schools and saw where they offered distance learning and the Appraisal Institute website. But I don't remember them talking about special rules. I mean, it sounded like they accepted, distance learning, online education without any special requirements. And I understand. I mean, when I took all my classes, I traveled all over the country, also, Carol, and you learn. I learned more in those classes outside of the classroom than in. But I just think in the situation we're in now, we keep losing appraisers, and at some point we're going to become irrelevant if we don't have enough appraisers to fulfill our clients' needs. It seems like this would be a way to encourage people to get into the business, or make it easier for them to get into the business. And the classes that I've taken online are, some classes I've taken are ones that you just sit there and listen, and there's no interaction at all. But there's other ones where there's lots of interaction, and there's, you have to take tests and you have to participate, and you really do learn a lot. I think they're great education offerings.
Well, we have a regulation that has us, in order to approve an online course, the provider has to go to a outside, see if I can say this right, certifying distance learning organization. We currently have a few of them. There's one organization that approves appraiser continuing education online, and one for real estate. But they have all of the resources to actually certify that they have a timing mechanism, that all of these protections are in place so that there is a quality education. And again, that allows us to look at that certification and not have to have experts on hand to actually review all of the technical components of the online offering. And that's something that's just super important for us to have in the regulation, again, so that we're not actually responsible for all of the technical end, that a certified distance learning body that is approved to do that approves these delivery methods before we even get the course content.
So Anthony, what Mark is saying is that at least in New York State, their regulation is established in such a way that they have an outside provider that certifies that the schools or the educational sources are meeting the technical requirements of whether a proctored exam, mechanisms in which the respondent has to respond to an exam or a question or concerns, and then the DOS will certify the curriculum within that course. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, it might be the fact that we're looking at the schools, and the schools don't have those mechanisms, but there's an outside provider that makes sure that those providers are following the guidelines that are established.
Right. And it does seem important that we have that, because we don't want people taking the classes or some kind of fraudulent getting credit for classes fraudulently, and then going out there and starting to practice and not knowing what they're doing. Obviously, I don't want that, but it seems like we could, we could speed up the process, or make it easier.
All right, so let me ask a question, Mark, because it seems like half of this might already be established. So if we have a mechanism to certify, if we have an outside service that certifies the educational providers, that they have mechanisms, stop mechanisms, test mechanisms, whatever we say they need to have. If we already have that, so it really is just a regulatory change that we allow you, and I'm going to say our 5 through 11 can now be done long distance learning. Becky, don't jump me, it's probably wrong.
I'm keeping my
I'm
mouth
using
shut.
numbers for examples. But our 1 through 5 can't. So really it's just a regulatory change in allowing the 5 subclasses to be allowed to be taken like the 5 upper classes.
Yeah, that could be part of that rule, or
So we have mechanisms in place, correct?
if you wanted to limit it to certain courses.
Right, so
Some
it's-
courses would have to be classroom and others.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
So what we're
That's
saying
a
is,
good idea.
so what we're saying is, in a review of our course, everything's already here. We just have to change what we're allowing.
Yeah, it's here for continuing education, it's just not here for qualifying.
Right. So really, what it is, it's a change in regulatory language, because we already have mechanisms in place with continuing education, right?
Right.
So it's not that big of a leap of faith that we can actually address this and make the changes. Okay. Let me make a suggestion. 'Cause you know I'm a subcommittee guy. Steve's a subcommittee guy. We're having a shift. Anthony, would you mind if we had another board member and a Mark and Jody and Sharon, if we started some communication back and forth with you guys to see if we can put something in a more organized fashion to move forward?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, and as long as Jim is sitting there, Jim's on the subcommittee. Jim, that's what happens. when we told you to go left and you went right, it wasn't
Should have
our
went to
fault.
Albany.
You know?
Yes.
When you go left instead of right, it's not our fault that you went right. All right, so that being said, do we have to make a motion to establish a subcommittee with this?
No.
All right, so Anthony, and I'm gonna, as I look, and Sharon's gonna look at me like she wants to take my head off. Sharon, can we use you as a point person between Mark, Jody, and Anthony and Jim to try to get all this together? Okay. All right. Anthony, I told you, if you called me, what would happen? You see?
I know.
So no one calls me anymore. All right. Good conversation and a good result. A good result because, and it kind of on topic, off topic. I will tell you that field work, being on the front line, volume for appraisers is going up. I had a meeting with a fairly large regional financial institution last week with their regional president and their appraiser coordinator because I was concerned about the volume. And I said to them, is it because you're busier? He said, no, it's because we have a shorter list of appraisers. In some conversation now, with some people in the field, I'm learning that a lot of the appraisers don't want to work with the AMCs, so therefore that's why the list is shrinking. I was under the impression that we just don't have anybody in the mix. So I think, Anthony, this topic's timely. Because I've beaten this drum for a couple of years that we need to start addressing, because we're going to have a shortage. Okay? And I can see it by the numbers of people coming in is shrinking, and the people that are there are aging. So eventually, we're going to have a shortage. I didn't look at you, Carly, but you're not front. All right, so, all right, Anthony, thank you very much for all your
You're welcome.
information,
Thank
for
you.
all your help with this. Okay, moving on, I can find my agenda. All right, so next under new business, we have newsletters, Steve Raffaello, Rebecca Jones. I keep picking on Whitney, but somewhere along the way, it was mandatory that we put out a newsletter or an email blast to our licensees, and Ernest can probably speak to this. Way back when AQB, and I'm very bad with acronyms, said to us, you're the redheaded stepchild, you need to start sending out newsletters, and at one point we were. We haven't heard back from them on that, have we?
We haven't, and I think you and I have been around for probably around the same period of
You're
time.
much
When
younger.
I first came to the department, it was a regular thing that we did. We did the newsletter, we published the list of discipline, but we also had articles of interest to the industry that were submitted by board members. I think once our CE compliance improved, the appraisal subcommittee requirement that we have the newsletter, they backed off. I know we still publish information on our website. So I think the discussion now is, does it make sense to do a more substantive newsletter for the industry? Articles of interest, things that are going on at the federal level, some of the FHA issues. And if so, we would need people to give us material.
Which now I'm gonna look at my smart people.
Yep, I'm
I
gonna
mean smart.
I'm gonna jump
my
in.
My literate writing people. Becky, jump in there.
This literally came up on a subject matter with our NISAR appraiser meeting, and because it was about the fingerprinting, because that's what it was for me, because I had new students coming in, and I knew the law was changing with the fingerprinting requirement, but I couldn't get the proper data to give to the students. So that was one flow of information that I would have been really great for the newsletter. So it came up, and we've got NISAR's blessing as far as, you know, they'll take it and promulgate it more to the members also too. So when it comes to articles, I don't think we're going to have an issue with that, because the Appraisal Foundation and other entities that we can get information from, especially the foundation, because the foundation is producing a lot of stuff, and I can filter that to whoever the point person is for that information on that, or even just start soliciting. And I'm going to, Bill Collins in New York, I can, he's a writer. He actually does a lot of publication and information, so it's really just getting appraisers that can write articles, and then you guys to filter them to make sure they're correct information. Yeah. Bill, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here, Becky.
Yep. Is that something I can pull you into, perhaps, to help work on?
Sure, I'd be happy
Okay.
to.
There we go. So, yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then you can work with Jody.
Okay.
The material to be sent to Sharon. And then, I mean, how many articles do you think should be in the newsletter? 3, 5?
I don't know. I had a copy of Arizona's, and Arizona's
Oh, that'd be
was
great.
yeah.
I'd like to see that.
We can take a look at a couple other. Arizona was probably one of the better ones that I had seen that really had good that I picked up and read. You know, that was good information. So if we copy off some of the other states, I think we'll be okay. So yeah.
Okay, so so yourself and Bill
Yep.
can work along with Jody.
Yep.
In gathering articles, we can vet the articles and then disperse them to the board members, and the board members can, because we have AMC, possibility of mandatory licensing.
Yep. We have a lot of stuff.
Talking about qualified courses to be taken with distance learning. So along the way, you know, here's my only question. Are we going to do mailers? Because I know that the governor's office, rightfully so, is concerned about cost overruns or budgeting. I mean, are we going to do, I know we don't have, I know our computers are somewhat a little behind the times. Kind of that world.
You can't do an email blast.
We can't do an email blast. We had talked about possibility of going to NISAR and ask them if they could use their, because they have a subcategory list of. So maybe we'll. And Anthony, how about this? Can we go? I mean, I know you and your father and also Jim are heavy hitters with the appraisal institutes. Can we go to their? Do they have a state association we can go to ask them if we come up with a newsletter? Can you email blast out to your members? So between
I'm sure we can. I mean, it seems like they forward information, you know, on a regular basis. So with this newsletter, is it something that you want to email to everybody or just post on the website?
Well, that's what the discussion is now. If we physically have to mail it, we're talking about.
I think he's saying email it or post it on the website.
Post on the website.
You can do both.
We can do both.
I wasn't talking about paper.
Yeah, what I'm trying to envision is, because unfortunately our system is a little antiquated, so we don't have email addresses for all of our appraisers. So maybe if you guys can get the word out, we could have a spot on our website for people who are interested in getting the newsletter. They could send us their email, they could sign up for it, and then we'll post it on the website, but we could also, for those who want to directly email it to them, we could have this updated, we could do an email blast.
Yeah, we require email addresses on renewal or application.
I think you don't have
Yeah, do we have a spot in the system to capture that?
We have a spot, and it's on the renewal, but it's a maintenance maintaining issue sometimes.
Yeah, but at least be beginning.
Yeah.
How about this? We can always.
Yeah, let's look into that.
We can.
Okay.
Becky, maybe we can communicate with NISAR and with the Appraisal Institute. Would at least we can email out the link.
Right.
No, Department of State newsletter.
And that's why I was going to say, Fannie Mae actually just started a newsletter within the last 30, 40 days. And basically they're just promulgating it by saying, here's the link if you want it. Everybody's on it because everybody wants the information. I don't think that's going to be an issue. There's enough groups between the Institute, between NISAR, we've got the New York State Coalition, getting that information out, I don't think is going to be an issue, except for maybe those appraisers that are not active. So that would be probably the audience that are still holding their license, but they're not being active. So that would be the group that we might miss out on.
So you're saying a link to our website, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yes. Just like you said, it says a newsletter, and if you want the newsletter, give us your email address if you can do it that way. Maybe we can start off with just a link.
Yeah.
And then just, it's so easy to take that link and put it on social media. I mean, that's where the fire is.
Yeah, we have a Facebook page at the Department of State.
Oh, you do?
We do.
I didn't know
We have a
that.
Twitter account,
Twitter account, you can follow us.
I don't do Twitter.
You don't tweet?
No, we don't. Did you find it, Steve? You looking for it on Facebook? Okay.
I'm looking at the 17 phone calls from my clients since I got
Okay,
it.
Steve, focus.
Not gonna lie, that's what I'm looking at. All right, so we have a subcommittee for that. All right, so moving on to the last item of new business, background checks, fingerprinting, and I'm gonna defer to Whitney Clark again.
All right, so we've received a lot of questions, and I know that some of the board members have as well, about the background check requirements. The AQB adopted new background check requirements for all of the states that were effective on January 1st. Earlier versions of the exposure draft required every state to do fingerprinting. The rule that was ultimately adopted backed off of that. What they now require is that we at least ask if an applicant has something that would call into question their trustworthiness. Vicki Ledbetter, our ASC policy manager, reviewed our policy procedures and has confirmed that we comply with the new requirements. Essentially, what we do is on every application we ask about criminal convictions and license suspensions and revocations. It's a self-disclosure requirement, but that does currently comply with the AQB requirements.
Good. Yeah.
And I have a copy of a publication they put out that I can send that to you in case you get any questions.
For the newsletter.
For the newsletter.
Yeah. Because that was a question of a new student going for their assistant's license, is how do I do the fingerprinting? And I'm like, I'm not sure. So let me find out. So, yeah. Yeah. So if we had that, that could be something we could get out there to the schools.
Is it possible to send board members a copy of that?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. If there are any questions or comments under new business, I will move to bullet point 5 on our agenda, which would be the public comment period. Anybody in Buffalo have a public comment you would like to share?
No public
Jim,
members.
It's too late now, Jim. You can't get off. Anyone in New York have a public comment for the public comment section?
Yes, Bill Collins. I'd like to make a couple comments. I think Becky's.
Can you come closer to the table so you can be okay?
It's on our subcommittee now.
Okay, I think Becky's suggestion for bringing some appraisal stories to the forefront to help move the AMC bill forward, I think that's a real good suggestion. Just one side note from that, on that AMC bill, I'm guessing maybe it's not too late to include a few amendments to that or modifications of it. And one thought I had was why can't we have something in there that discusses certain practices of AMC, certain very poor practices, such as solicitation of appraisal assignments, of appraisers for appraisal assignments through broadcast techniques, where they do an email blast to 10 or 15 appraisers in an area, and it's time sensitive. They have to respond very quickly with a fee quote and turn time. And what it tends to do is they tend to do this oftentimes with very complex assignments, and appraisers are sending in quotes for $400 to appraise a $10 million property, and you're getting appraisers who might not be that well qualified to do these jobs. And I just think that's a particularly very poor practice, and I'm wondering if New York might take the lead on this nationally in their AMC bill by addressing specific practice such as this. We have taken a lot of thoughts and good ideas from other states in drafting this AMC bill. I think maybe New York, with something like this, could take the lead in illustrating a particular practice that is not a good one. Getting away from the AMC bill for a second, Becky, I just have a question for you on the mandatory licensing law. You brought that up. There seems to be no movement here at all in New York State for such a law.
I brought that up, and it's been sitting for since September 2015, when we submitted the proposed recommendations for the amendment to the Department of State and the wording for that. And it actually has a much better definition of who can practice appraisal, who can call themselves an appraiser, what they are limited, what is limited in scope, what it's both for appraisal and other valuation services, which was not addressed in previous legislation. So it's sitting there. I honestly do not know if this board. I don't think. Did we approve it? And I think it was because it was an amendment. We didn't have to approve it. It was
right. We were amending the original. I mean, the history of this. The history of this bill. I mean, days prior to me, it was like September of 1999 when the original legislation was written. And I would think I think Anthony Jerisol's father, Mr. Pomeroy, and
I can't think of his name. Yeah, this is my time.
I mean, it dates back almost 20 years. Back in 2005, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, we were going to put it in a housekeeping bill. 2005, and the governor's office or someone in that extreme position said, if you attach that, they will not pass it. And it was we would be decertifying the state. That was the best chance we had at that point to get it through, because we were attaching it to a housekeeping bill. The reason that you haven't seen something new introduced is that we are still working off of the legislative number that might have been back from 2005. I don't know. I know that we're looking and we're making changes to the bill from 2005. We've not rewritten the bill. Rewritten the legislation. So I mean, I don't know, Bill, if that gives you your kind of back history on it.
No, thank you. One thing I'm wondering is realtor opposition one of the main reasons why this is not moving forward?
It was originally.
No.
It wasn't. It's not now, but it was originally, because some of the downstate brokers were making an enormous amount of money doing BPOs for national financial institutions that were accepting them on LTVs less than 60/40. I mean, I can give you word and verse for that because I've been around long enough. There was a big pushback from NYSAR at one point, and it was coming from the larger brokers who were making an enormous amounts of money from the financial institutions, and we were trying to govern out BPOs as a device in which you were able to lend with. Since then, that pushback has really been less.
Okay, I'm just wondering if this is not if we're giving short if we're neglecting this particular law, which I think might be as important as anything that's been discussed today. I don't think we necessarily have an appraiser shortage right now. We do have an aging demographic, but we have mortgage applications that are projected to decline. We have automated valuation models and products that will be eating into, which have eaten into mortgage appraisal volume and are projected to do even more so in the future. I think this is very important for appraisers in terms of their private appraisal practice in the future, and I think I'm just wondering if we should maybe give a little bit more attention here, and if there is any opposition from real estate brokers or from the brokerage community. This is an out-of-the-box thought, but is there a possibility that brokers, say with 5 years experience, might receive a shortcut to obtaining an appraiser license, taking some of their experience?
Bill, we're going to Becky wants to field that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, as a representative of NYSAR here, NYSAR is not, well, the state association is not in opposition of the mandatory licensing. So we're not even seeing that. And what you're proposing was something that we originally proposed before. So honestly, Carol and I being co-writers of, well, at least amending the original piece, we discussed that thoroughly and felt we didn't want to open up that can of worms again. They've seen the amendment and have not had any huge issues with it. But Bill, I think the key to this, and we talked about it, is getting it out to the boots on the ground appraisers and getting the stories of why we need this, and bringing it to New York State.
So simultaneously, the AMC bill and the mandatory licensing, bringing those kind of appraiser stories out to the forefront. Is that what you're proposing? I think it's a good idea.
You got it, and you have a good vehicle of doing that too. So I think you and I will chit chat after this and figure that out.
Okay.
Well, can I address something else that he brought up? And I so appreciate your comments and being here. You said something about an amendment to the AMC bill, and it would be difficult to make it on a particular point of business, I think. However, within this bill, and of course it's difficult to read because of the typeset that all bills are in, but there is competency issues that the AMCs are absolutely have to hire competent appraisers. So this goes right to USPAC, and it's actually in the bill in more than one place. So I just, but we do not address a particular business practice like broadcast, which I totally understand is very annoying, and the chances are that somebody accepts an appraisal without researching the assignment prior to accepting, which is just not good practice.
Right. But let me jump there for a second, Carol, because I wrote some notes. And Bill, this is my own personal experience, but where Carol is saying that we have put language within the bill itself to discuss competency and geographic competency, which the AMCs have to practice.
Both for the AMC
and for mandatory licensing. But I'm obviously, on the front lines because I'm a,
boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. Thank you. But when you get those broadcast blasts, it says, please view client requirements prior to accepting and bidding the offer. So if you're clicking the client's acceptance, you're looking at the requirements. And if the building is a $10 million multiple use,
shame on it.
Shame on them for accepting that. Some of this is self-regulatory. You got to click that button. If you're accepting that assignment without clicking that button, it falls back on you. Because you need to understand you have the requirements to fulfill that assignment, or you're going to go out and get somebody to work with you that allows you to have the requirements to fulfill that assignment. So as much as we want to make this bill as thorough and thick as we can, which I think we have, I think some of it becomes self-regulatory, that you need to understand what you're accepting before you click the acceptance button.
It's in there.
So
Another article.
And Bill, you know what? And
Another
we appreciate the input. In other regards, this came up a number of times with people that we're talking to, that they're getting into assignments that they're not qualified to take. And can we govern that with the AMC bill? We had a very deep discussion about coming up with a customary and acceptable fee. And I will tell you, I'm dead set against it. Because you're in violation, and Lillian can take this one, you're in violation of RICO Acts or whatever it might be, with fixing fees. So, I mean, we had a big, deep discussion about that, and we had a big, deep discussion about competence and about people accepting assignments that they weren't qualified for and bidding too low. And there comes to a point where we can't regulate it, and it becomes self-regulatory. And I hope it kind of gives you some kind of background on where we were going with this.
Thank you. I hear that. The reason I brought it up, I write.
I'm glad you brought it up because it's a good point.
I write appraisernews.com, and since 2009, I have received dozens, if not 100 or more, emails from appraisers around the country. We go out to almost 25,000 appraisers around the country, specifically on this broadcast appraisal practice, and it goes beyond a business practice. I think there's a manipulation of some of the larger AMCs. Thankfully, some of the ones that were the biggest practitioners of this nefarious practice have gone out of business, leaving a lot of appraisers with unpaid appraisal bills, by the way. But there still are several of them, and in particular one that has all the ability in the world to identify whether a property is a complex property, and they continue to solicit appraisers for assignments in this fashion. But I understand it is complicated, and it might not work in this bill. Perhaps the attention should be just on the bill as is, which looks very, very nicely written, and getting this moving forward, as well as the mandatory licensing law.
Bill, thank you very much, because you bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience to the table, and that's what really makes for a well-rounded regulatory and legislation that we try to move forward. So the more input we have and the more comments you have, we appreciate that. Okay. Is there anybody in New York or Buffalo that has any further public comment? Okay. Do we want to pick for next date, or do you just want to adjourn and then we'll...
Hey, public comment Albany.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What a surprise.
You've been holding back.
Anthony, I was trying to avoid the budget talk.
This
It's
is
a good
important
try.
stuff.
I know.
So it's in your packet.
Okay.
This is the Appraisal Foundation AQB exposure draft.
In here in Albany, we have Rebecca Smith, who's a very Rebecca Jones, who's a very qualified person who everyone knows. I would just like to remind her that we do have bylaws which only allow you for 7 minutes.
If you would stop,
Clock is
then I
on.
could take it. Okay. So I just wanted to just draw this to your attention. I'm so happy it's in your packet, because this is important. I'm actually on the working group for the Practum courses, or practical courses that they're calling them now. So this is a third exposure draft for the AQB, and there are 3 specific items in here that's going to be coming down the pike. Is the college level, they're going to be reducing that, and then the practical application courses, and then the experience requirements. So 2 of the things I just want to make sure that we know are coming down the pike, especially when you guys are talking about the online courses. This is the intent of the Appraisal Foundation is to fast track the appraisers. Okay? So in this exposure draft, we're talking about getting rid of the 24 months, all right? And we're also talking about getting rid of the field experience. So in this exposure draft, if you turn over, let's see, on page 12, specifically talking about the practical application classes. So what they're talking about in here is somebody could literally take these courses for 100% of their experience. So they will not have to work underneath the supervisory appraiser. They can actually take the practical courses that are there. And this is the work group that I'm on. I was a little shocked when I understood on page 15 that this could take 100%. where it talks about it can take 100%. So what we're talking about is somebody who wants to get into the appraisal industry would take all the qualifying courses, R5 through R11 USPAP. They would, I think at that point in our state, they'd get their assistant's license, and then they could take these modules for 100% of their experience. So in the theory, they could be licensed in 6 months as a certified appraiser or general appraiser. So I know when Anthony was talking about the concern of getting appraisers in the industry, the Appraisal Foundation is looking at that, and this is what we're calling the fast track. Now, whether or not New York State accepts it, but that's what this is all about. And it's huge, in my opinion. This is absolutely huge. And this is the third exposure draft. Actually, I just got, NAR is making a comment on this. I just got it from the staff person, and I wasn't rude in looking on my phone, Steve, as I was listening to you guys speaking. So I just want to make sure that my state is completely aware of what is coming down the track. Thank you.
Still got 3.5 minutes.
Wow.
Nothing else about it.
That'll never happen again.
Never happen again. Okay. Well, Becky, thank you for the update. Are any questions of Becky from Buffalo or New York?
I do. I have a question. So this draft here, as far as the college degree, they want to remove that requirement totally.
Well,
Is that,
when it comes to the college credits, I will say that's not my area of expertise, but I know it's on page 9 and page 10. And this is a very thorough document because the Appraisal Foundation is very thorough. So when you look at it, for the certified residential and then the license, they're removing it for the license, which is on page 8. And then for the certified residential, they're going from the 30 to the 21 hours, and they're leaving the general alone.
But I'm not sure, is it, are they talking 21 hours, or are they talking about equivalency exams?
They can do both. The CLEP. Yeah, they're bringing back the CLEP again. Jody's question was, is the CLEP, because we had the CLEP where you could get the experience that way, taking those exams, and then they got rid of that, and now we're going back and then reducing the time.
Do we have a time frame, Becky? Do we know when they're going to be adopting this?
Okay, good question. So when are they going to adopt this? This is the third exposure draft. We're still in the working mode of the practicum classes. So they need to be put together. We're going to meet again. So, yeah. It literally was exposing this to see what the reaction was. Is literally, we can get someone licensed in 6 months. How do y'all feel about that? And we'll see what the comments are.
So it's out for comment, public comment right now?
Yeah, the comments are due back on...
before May 12th.
Yeah, it's soon.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it says if adopted, it'll go into effect January 1st, 18.
Yeah, but the classes aren't put together. The work group for the courses, one of the questions is, how are we going to initiate these courses? Because if you go back through the history, when they made the original changes in 2015, do I have that book? Oh, God. In this book, they actually have practicum courses in here, but no educators picked it up and formulated the courses. So we're looking at the foundation of saying, all right, let's create courses, or let's hire someone as a foundation to create them, then get them to the providers. Make sense? Kind of like the general courses that we don't have books on.
So in this case, you're going to actually put the course in front of the car and make sure the courses are established prior to them passing the regulations.
Okay, good question. So Steve's question is said putting the horse or the course before the cart. We don't know. That's part of the work group. Yeah. My issue is the instructors and who are going to be teaching these. Because here I am at the table, and I brought up New York State the whole time. Because New York State with the home inspectors, you can get the home inspectors in the field. So I fought and said, why can't we get the appraisers in the field in the class? So they drank the Kool-Aid on that one. So I was really happy. Yeah, because I kept saying, if New York State can do it, why can't we? And so they accepted the fact that these courses are actually going to be courses where I'm taking students to houses, like the home inspectors, except I'll be bringing them back and having them work on the file.
Okay, so take your instructor hat off for a second, because that's where your hat seems to be. Put your appraiser hat on. What's the biggest change here that you're concerned about as an appraiser?
So my biggest concern as an appraiser is somebody can be licensed within 6 months.
So they're really taking out the experience credits, correct? Majority of experience credits.
It's going to be all classroom will be their experience.
And taking a point from what Anthony said earlier, I mean, and I'm not being disrespectful, I learn more on the, you learn more out in the field than you do with the applications. I mean, you learn process in the classroom, but you actually see the application of the process out in the field. So just because someone has a college degree and says, look, I have a degree in math, I can teach math now, you know that once you look at how you're going to take what you learned and apply it to a kid in the classroom, it's totally different.
Correct. However, when we really had a conversation about it, a lot of these people are second generation people also. So there are certain places where it would fit.
Right, but you can't make a blanket requirement based
No.
on this group.
But it's an
apply to
option.
all these people.
It's an option because we have an appraiser shortage. The Appraisal Foundation feels they need to have a fast track because there's a perceived appraisal shortage. That's why they're doing this.
There is national.
You combat the fact that we don't have it.
Well,
We have an aging demographic, which by saying, okay, now you have second generation people that are coming in, we had another job. What are we adding? We're adding to the demographics of people that are going to retire in 10 years.
then write a comment. I don't know if you're allowed to, as a board member, to write a comment, but write a comment because I guarantee you, all those we read them as a work group. We read every single one of those comments and see what they are. So
We need to know whether board members
You
are.
can write a comment. I don't think we'll have time to draft an official comment from the board and get it vetted. But as individuals, if you want to write a comment, mention in it that you may sit on the board. I don't see a problem with that.
I would agree. I think we're better off as individuals than we are as a board, as a collective board.
And I will say on the titles there too, it does take a precedence where it's coming from also too. So it's kind of human nature in itself. Yeah. But okay, so that's good to know. So then write a comment,
All right.
and then I'll read it later.
I have to, in some of the closing, because I know we all have to get on when our lights else go do. I do have to tell you this, and I've said this before. The demographics of the board makeup now are nice because, first of all, we're geographically pretty well spread throughout the state, so we're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of areas: rural, urban, suburban. We have a lawyer, we have appraisers. I know we still need a general. But I also tell you that, and I've said this to Carol and Becky so much they want to probably punch me, and Anthony can appreciate this. We have representation at NYSAR, Appraisal Institute, most of the organizations that factor in or weigh in on stuff. So we not only do we have comments coming in from those organizations, we have comments going out to those organizations, which are discussed and then brought back. So if you want to talk about the web going out, we have a lot of fingers that are talking about things that we're doing. So it's really good at this point. All right, and I really appreciate everyone's effort. I know we travel and we take time out of our busy schedule with kids and work and so on and so forth to be here because without input from educated people, we have very little effect. Okay, so for myself and for everybody at staff who's here, we appreciate everyone's effort and input previously and moving forward. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Buffalo, second motion.
I'll second.
Jim's now on the record. You can't go. All right. New York, Buffalo, thank you for your time and effort. Everyone knows what they need to do from here, and we're going to have another meeting fairly quickly. We're not going to wait a year. Okay.
Probably fall. I
Probably
believe
fall.
I think we have to vote on the new edition of use path, and the ASC is going to be here, I think September, October. So we're going to try to schedule our next meeting.
Okay,
coincide with
and
the
everyone
ASC.
has their homework. Talk to your senators, assembly people. Let's get this appraisal management bill on somewhere and passed. All right, thank you, everybody.